And to close out our show, we bring you our conversation with Liz Wheeler on her latest work. In her new book, Hide Your Children, Exposing the Marxists Behind the Attack on America's Kids, Wheeler explores how the rise of Marxism in American culture goes hand in hand with the influence of gender ideology. We have that interview for you right now. Liz, thanks so much for joining us. I think a lot of people may be pretty alarmed when they see the title of your book, but the concepts you put forward are pretty clearly thought out. Explain the thesis that you put forward in Hide Your Children.
Yeah, thanks so much, Prudence, for having me today. I really appreciate it. It is an intense topic. I think it's a topic that causes parents to have a visceral reaction. And it's something that we've been having this reaction to for the past couple of years, maybe since COVID, when a lot of us would look over, kids' shoulders on Zoom school and see that they were just being inundated with critical race theory and trans ideology, in addition to the 1619 Project and good old moral relativism. And so this book began for me as a question of, why is this escalating now? This seems like such a concerted effort to target our children. Who's behind this? What is their purpose? And what I realized in the course of my research is that it's not new. This is not something that just started. It's actually decades in the making. The left has been trying to re-engineer our society through the capture of what I call our major foundational cultural institutions for a long time, more than my entire lifetime. And sadly, they've been pretty successful in this effort. They've captured most of the media, your show excluded, of course. They've captured the education system. They've sadly captured a lot of religious institutions. They've captured the law, and they now have their sights set on the nuclear family, in particular children. So what I do in the first half of this book is I name the names of the people, the Marxists, and the organizations that are behind the capture of these institutions, behind the targeting of our children. And then in the second half of the book, I propose a solution that I will admit to you is different than the solution the Republican Party is offering for how we can start winning these culture wars once and for all, how we can retake these institutions and protect our kids.
And you point out that in America, the traditional roles of men, women, marriage, and sex have been totally twisted in the first half of your book. Explain what you predict will happen next, Liz.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you dissect the attack on the American family. It's also not new. And I posit that there are 5 elements to the nuclear family: man, woman, marriage, sex, and children. And each of these individual elements has been under assault for a long time. And the efforts behind these attacks are largely related to Marxism. For example, the sexual revolution, which completely twisted in Americans' minds the proper context for sex.
Right.
I mean, the term sexual revolution itself was coined by a Marxist. The same with the feminist movement. I mean, Feminist Mystique, this famous book that set women against their husbands and against marriage and kids, was written by a woman who was a Marxist activist for a long time. They are now focusing on our children because the final frontier in their assault on the family is to radically alienate children from their parents. So we see this in 2 forms. We see this with their efforts to assault our children's minds and bodies with poisonous ideology. And we see this also simultaneously in their effort to undermine parental rights, whether this is through their efforts to presumptively ban homeschooling, whether this is taking custody away from parents who refuse to, quote unquote, affirm their children's gender identity, or through efforts to say, well, parents, you don't want to vaccinate your child. When that child's 12, they can make that decision themselves, even if the parent is opposed to it. We are at the cusp of this final effort by the Marxists to impose their Marxism on us, which is why, even though a lot of parents have spoken up in this country the last couple years, and we've achieved a lot of victories, it isn't causing the Marxists to sit back on their heels. It's causing them to escalate because they know their moment to do this is either now or never.
Liz, you're a devout Catholic. Talk to me about your observations about our church and our faith in today's current climate. How do the events of the last several decades still impact our Catholic Church today?
Yes, I am a lifelong Catholic, a devout Catholic Christian, and it shapes my worldview. And that's not something that Republicans and conservatives, when they are also Christian, should be afraid to share. It's not something that we should remove from our policy, our public policy activism, because at the end of the day, there is objective truth. There's objective reality. Some things are good because God made them good. Some things are bad because they are against God. They are working for the evil one, if you will. And conservatives and Republicans have fallen prey to this idea that we should not include any of our morality in either legislative efforts and public policy or in our cultural prescriptions. We should know that it's not only okay, it is our duty to have moral concepts driving our public policy. And lest I be accused of being a Bible thumper advocating for theocracy, this is not a new idea that I'm proposing. This is our constitutional legacy. The framers of our Constitution understood that liberty is not the license to do whatever you want. Liberty is a means to something greater. It's a means to justice, and justice as defined by God, justice according to natural law. If we are to win these culture wars, we have to reclaim this idea and reinsert it into the public forum, or else I fear we will continue to lose.
Yeah, very insightful. Liz, we're running out of time, but I can't let you go without touching on this. Planned Parenthood is the largest abortion conglomerate in the world. You call it in your book the biggest corporate groomer of all. Not a great slogan to add to their Rolodex. Explain the gravity of how closely tied the two evils of gender ideology and abortion are.
Well, most of the time when we think of Planned Parenthood, we think of the blood money that they profit off of butchering unborn young babies in the womb. It's horrendous. But Planned Parenthood has moved on from aborting babies, butchering children in the womb, to butchering children outside the womb. Not that they've given up the latter, but they have adopted they've adopted going into schools, as they brag about being one of the largest sex educators in our public school system. They go in schools and they teach children gender ideology. And then the result of teaching children gender confusion is that these children, when they become teenagers, then come to Planned Parenthood for transgender hormone therapy. Planned Parenthood is now one of the biggest, if not the biggest, supplier of transgender hormones to young people in the entire country. So it's a pipeline from Planned Parenthood teaching children this poisonous ideology that festers in children until they become so confused that they go to Planned Parenthood for transgender hormones, and Planned Parenthood fills their coffers butchering these children as well as unborn ones.
Thank you so much for explaining that and for explaining to us about your book. We encourage all our viewers to check it out. Thank you for joining us, Liz Wheeler.
Thanks, Prudence. I appreciate it.